As Liz Truss continues to mess around, there are bigger fears about what's going on in Ukraine. General Surovikin, this is the man who was appointed coincidentally on September the 8th. And on September the 8th, you will remember that the bridge, that phallic extension from Russia into Crimea, beholden of Putin's putrid power, was attacked, or seemingly attacked. The most likely scenario is this was a false flag, because that's what Surovikin manages. He is the father of the false flag, often also known as General Armageddon. And the suspicion at the moment, given the evacuations going on around the Dnieper River, is that Surovikin is going to behave in the same way that he behaved or managed this false flag explosion on the bridge. He will manage a false flag explosion of the Khachava hydroelectric power station plant in the Kherson region. Now, what would that do? That would presumably produce intense flooding and disrupt the invasion to recapture the region by Ukrainian forces. But what is he going to do to engineer that explosion, that false flag attack? Now, the Russians under Putin's control in the past have shown that they are quite happy to attack, for example, the Zaporizhia power station, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, and to risk a nuclear accident. They're showing they're quite happy to do that. They have actually been trained, of course, for that transition from a conventional war into a reduced nuclear confrontation. They've been trained to expect to use tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield. So we shouldn't be surprised to see that transition taking place sooner rather than later. But there are many other weapons that could be used, for example, to target the Khachava hydroelectric power plant. We've seen some of these weapons deployed on the battlefield in Ukraine a little earlier. These weapons with devastating impact. And the area, the Kherson area, fronted by the Russian Vladimir Soldo, has issued a directive for all Russians to leave that immediate area. And Western media has focused on the idea that Ukrainians are caught up in this and are being forcibly repatriated, forcibly taken into Russia, and that this would be against human rights. I think the real story is that Putin and Surovikin are preparing an area which they can say is now uninhabited for quite a devastating bomb attack. And those people who remain there are, they will say, are simply being defiant or are engaged with, quote, the enemy. Putin has now imposed martial law on the areas that he took by land grab, and again trying to establish that this is Russian territory. And all this is going on while Britain is involved in stupid games in Westminster. Putin's missile launch system, particularly the Iskander system, has now been deployed in Belarus and across the eastern frontier with Ukraine in Western Russia, in the area between Rostov-on-Don, that's the city that our current Prime Minister, soon to be our ex-Prime Minister, doesn't know exists in Russian territory. She didn't know her geography when she was trying to play chicken with Lavrov. Rostov-on-Don, which is where the Wagner Brigade is trained. The Iskander missile batteries are ranged between there and the Ukrainian border. These missile batteries can carry various super weapons. They can also carry nuclear weapons, and they are deployed. And Putin's tactic is well known. It's called escalate to de-escalate. And the plan is to escalate to a limited nuclear confrontation, to throw nuclear weapons at a country that has not got nuclear weapons. It's not got nuclear weapons because it signed a treaty with its neighbour to surrender its nuclear weapons, which it had inherited from the former USSR, to surrender those nuclear weapons to its neighbour, to its brother state of the Russian Federation. Russia is taking advantage of that. Russia is attacking a non-nuclear state with nuclear weapons, or at least that is the threat. That is repugnant on any level. It's against any sort of international behaviour. The problem with these smaller nuclear weapons, which can still yield a bomb about a third of the size of the bomb which went off in Hiroshima, the problem is that these smaller nuclear warheads are not governed by any international treaties. Russia has about 200 of them. The West has about 100, ranged mostly around Europe. This is a very dangerous period, and as I say, our British government is inward-looking, navel-gazing, introspective, and completely and utterly emasculated. We are worse than useless, and we are of no help at all to those people in Ukraine at this moment. It's an utter, utter disgrace. We're facing global terror on a scale we have not seen. And meanwhile, Liz Truss and her cronies are doing their knitting.